Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I come to you today to visit on the floor of the Senate because since last November, the President has been trying to convince the American people that he has a plan to restart our economy. He was in North Carolina yesterday with his counsel to talk about issues. And I will tell you that, to me, Mr. President, the President's approach has left a lot to be desired. If the White House created as many jobs as it creates speeches, things would be a lot better. I will tell you that the President's empty words are not filling the pockets of American citizens. Now the President has been given a new chance to show his commitment to economic growth. And that is the chance that he has recently had to nominate a Secretary of Commerce for the United States. When I think about the Commerce Department, it's a department, its job is in terms of American businesses to make those businesses more innovative at home and more competitive overseas. Well, the mission of the Commerce Department states that it promotes job creation, economic growth, sustainable development, and improved standards of living for all Americans. So at a time of economic crisis like the one we have now, a nominee who can fulfill that mission, that very mission of promoting job creation, economic growth, sustainable development, and improved standards of living for all Americans, that very mission is needed more than ever. So despite the administration's promise that their so-called stimulus bill would keep unemployment rates below 8%, we know unemployment went to 10%, and it is still over 9%. Our job growth last month was the slowest that it has been in almost a year. Over 13 million Americans are still out of work, and nearly half of them have been unemployed for 6 months or more. This is the highest rate of chronic unemployment that we have had since the Great Depression. And these problems aren't just happening at home. Our position, America's position on the international stage, is slipping as well. America's ability to pay its debts has already been called into question by Standard & Poor's credit ratings. Moody's is asking the same question, and recently, Fitch credit ratings also warned us that the United States was playing with fire. Gas prices are very high. I hear it every weekend at home in Wyoming, and families are spending $800 on average more for gasoline this year than they did last year. We spend $48 billion more on goods from other countries than we do on our own goods, and our economic situation is already bad. And the headlines sound worse every day. Let me just give you a couple of examples. From Gallup, U.S. investor optimism declines. From Reuters, Wall Street ends down as jobs data disappoints. From Bloomberg, economic recovery is languishing as Americans await signal of better times. Even the chairman of the Federal Reserve said that the job market was far from normal. Well, the facts are clear. Americans deserve the best leadership in the Commerce Department, the department that is responsible for trade, job creation, and economic growth. But last week, the President nominated John Bryson to be his new Commerce Secretary. Many may ask, who is this man? Is he a job promoter? Someone who can bring economic growth and improve the standard of living for all Americans? Well, John Bryson's record clearly shows that he is not such a nominee. In fact, his resume is exhibit number 1 in proving that this administration is not serious about job growth. At best, it is unclear why John Bryson is the President's nominee for this position. At worst, his nomination is proof that the President wants environmental activists running our economic development strategy. When announcing Mr. Bryson's nomination, the President had praised Mr. Bryson's background. According to the President, Mr. Bryson would be a good Commerce Secretary because, quote, he's been a fierce proponent of alternative energy. Well, if Mr. Bryson was being nominated to be Energy Secretary or Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency or even Interior Secretary, that fact might be relevant. But Mr. Bryson is being nominated to be Secretary of Commerce. Mr. Bryson does have a background in the private sector. The problem is that his private sector success has more to do with government help than with his own ability to create jobs or grow the economy. Don't take my word for it. The Wall Street Journal already has written that Mr. Bryson believes wholeheartedly in a strategy of politicized investment. They also wrote that the companies that he has been associated with have generated revenue through handouts from the federal government rather than by being profitable. We need a Commerce Secretary who knows how businesses turn a profit and how to create private sector jobs. We need a Commerce Secretary who will make it easier and cheaper for the private sector to create jobs, not someone who will make it harder and more expensive for the private sector to create jobs. We need a Commerce Secretary who can understand all sectors of the economy rather than someone who picks winners and losers. Now, already to me, Mr. Bryson fails the test. His support for politicizing the United States investments is the least problematic element of his resume. Along with his private sector experience, he was also the founder of a group called the Natural Resources Defense Council, or the NRDC. This organization is so radically anti-business that even Massachusetts Democrat Congressman Barney Frank and John Tierney think it is troubling that Mr. Bryson is associated with it. These members of Congress have described the NRDC as, quote, one of those environmental organizations that has reflexively attacked the fishing industry inaccurately and without any real environmental basis. And it's not just the fishing industry that the NRDC reflexively attacks. Members of the NRDC's staff are on record saying, quote, there is no such thing as clean coal. Well, while gas prices soar and energy jobs are needed, a spokesman for the NRDC has said the NRDC has been very active and proud to be active in fighting new coal plant proposals in the United States. They've stood in the way also of life-saving sonar technology that would enhance America's national security. Why? Well, out of fear that it might harm the whales. They've also filed thousands of lawsuits to stop the production of American energy. And American energy is critical and a part of our American national security. This anti-energy agenda is so reflexive that the NRDC has even filed lawsuits to further delay future energy exploration in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, the delay has already stretched on so long that even former President Bill Clinton has called it ridiculous. John Bryson's career has consistently shown that he agrees with this overzealous approach to environmental policy. When Mr. Bryson first started at Edison Electric, the Los Angeles Times said that he had founded, quote, one of the nation's most aggressive environmental organizations. But when it comes to being anti-business, unpopular policies like cap and trade is one area where he has focused. He is one of its most aggressive supporters, and the record shows it. More importantly, his own words show it. Most Americans recognize cap and trade as a job-killing energy tax. Well, that's why the Waxman-Markey cap and trade bill couldn't pass the Senate. However, when referring to this very bill, John Bryson called it moderate but acceptable. A moderate but acceptable, he said, piece of legislation. He even said the legislation was good precisely because it was a good way to hide a carbon tax, to hide a tax. Mr. Bryson has repeatedly called for a national cap and trade system, and he's even put his money where his mouth is. But when you say a good way to hide a tax, is that what the role of the Secretary of Commerce is? To hide taxes on American businesses, to make them less competitive, to make it more expensive to do business? I think not, Mr. President. Well, according to the Daily Caller, Mr. Bryson's own company spent over $1 million lobbying for cap and trade. So John Bryson believes in politicizing American investment. He has founded a radical environmental organization and has spent significant amounts of money lobbying for a policy that he openly acknowledges is a cover for a job-killing energy tax. Mr. President, we need a Commerce Secretary. We need a Commerce Secretary who will work at making American businesses more innovative at home, more competitive abroad. We do not need a Commerce Secretary who is more interested in taking our hard-earned dollars than in creating jobs at home. The American people deserve a Commerce Secretary who is more interested in free trade than in cap and trade. The President may believe that John Bryson is the right man at the right time. I believe that John Bryson is the wrong man at the worst possible time. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.